about a month ago, my dad called me and he said, hey, your mom is wanting to remodel the bathroom. So I said, okay. So she's buying a new tub. I said, okay. So what do you want me to do? So I went over there late Thursday night. And as of this morning, there was still no leaks in the tub, and the tub was actually working like it's supposed to. Have you ever not done something because you were scared? Well, my dad, as we were walking through putting this tub together, I said, we have to cut a hole in the tub here and here and here, 3 spots. He said, well, why do you have to do that? I said, there's no why, we, you. And I said, you have to, because in order to put your faucets through, that's where you have to do so. What he didn't realize is the whole time he was making up excuses why he wasn't able to do it, he did it. Cut the holes in the floor for the drain lines to go through, the water lines to go through. He cut the holes in the tub to go through, and he even cut the new drain lines under the sewer line out completely in the floor, okay? I had to put it all together, but that's all right. But he didn't realize is that he actually could do more than what he thought he was capable of doing, okay? So many times in our lives, we convince ourselves we're not capable of doing something, right? And I don't care what it is. How many of you can remember, and maybe some of you can, remember the first time you ever rode a bicycle, right? Okay? Sometimes you might want to forget the first time you rode it, but how many of you remember the first time, when you rode the bicycle, were you able to get on that bicycle and man, you just took off and you never once crashed? Some people can do that. When one of our kids did that, just got on it and it was gone, right? It happens sometimes. But generally what happens is you crash, right? I can say for certain when I first learned to ride a bicycle in Crown Point, Indiana, 253 Walnut Lane, we had nice sidewalks and man, that concrete was horrible. That's all I have to say. But yet, you know what? To this day, I can get on a bicycle and ride it. I don't have to think about it. It's natural. Get right on. Even though I think I've ridden a bicycle once in the last 25 years. You see, sometimes we just have to remind ourselves that it's not nearly as hard as we think some things are in our lives. And I want to ask you, a few weeks ago, I shared with you about living dangerously in the hands of God. This morning, I want to ask and share with you how we can live dangerously in the hands of God. How can I live dangerously? That is, and we're going to take a look at a passage that, and I want to remind you something. When you and I live dangerously in the hands of God, that means there's going to be times we get knocked down, just like when I was riding my bicycle, got right back up. There's going to be times like my dad who was unsure about how you had to do something, but yet walked through it and did it. That can scare us, that can cause us not to want to do something. But the reality is, the only thing to me that is worse than failing is not trying to accomplish something. Because I truly believe that when you try and you work, there is no such thing as failing. When you serve God, I want you to understand something. You never fail ever when you are serving God. It might be difficult. It might be times that you feel like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I don't know how to ever do that one. I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure how. I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember when I first learned to do math. I don't remember when I first learned to write. Sometimes I wish I still would learn math. But I don't remember when I first learned to write. Do you guys remember when you first learned to write? I don't remember. I have no idea. I remember when they first invented the computers and they made us write computer programs in school. How many of you guys remember those days? Listen, those of you who have a computer now and you turn it on and it works, you are so spoiled. So spoiled. I remember having to type lines of code in my computer in 7th grade to make the program work. Wow, was that a scary day. But guess what happened? Still worked harder at it, and guess what today? Boy, we've come a long way, haven't we? So I want this morning to share with you, how can you live dangerously in the hands of God? And if you notice here, Paul wrote something here in Galatians chapter 5. verse 1. I want you to listen to what it says. It's very, very important. Listen to what Paul wrote to the churches of Galatia, what he writes to Trinity Baptist Church this morning. Again, Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. Paul says this, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free. And do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage." All right, I want you to digest that just a little bit. Okay, I want you to see. It says the first thing I want you to take your pens, whatever you have, and start out first and foremost. Underline, stand fast. Okay, I want you to underline that we're going to start there. Stand fast. And then I want you to move on further from there, and I want you to go down, and it says, "Do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage." Underline that part. Okay, those are key parts to understanding what Paul wants the church at Galatia, what Paul wants the church in the year 2019, what Paul wants the church at 375 East Southport Road, and what he wants you and he wants me to understand. That the beginning with standing fast, and then do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Now, the greatest teacher to ever walk the face of this earth was Jesus Christ. Make no mistake about it. The greatest teacher that ever was and will ever be. So Jesus Christ, as he spoke a few times. Jesus Christ was the Son of God, the very Son of God. Jesus Christ taught and he preached in a synagogue in his hometown of Nazareth. And when Jesus Christ was there in Nazareth, most people didn't like him. They didn't believe that anything from Nazareth was a good thing, that people from outside of Nazareth believed that, and people from inside of Nazareth couldn't believe that this carpenter's son would have authority, that this carpenter's son was capable of teaching, capable of standing up in a synagogue and making statements. Have you ever thought some of the things you've done in your life that when you were a kid you would have ever done them? Okay, I never would have thought that I stand here before you this morning, that when I was 15 years old, that this is where I would be for 35 years later. I want you to think about beginning in your life and in my life. But before we can learn to stand up, we must understand who Jesus Christ is. And Jesus Christ, as he was preaching in the synagogue, he quoted from Isaiah. And I want you to hear what he says about himself as he spoke in the synagogue. And he said this, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound." Now, Jesus Christ, when he made that statement, made just a few people angry. Okay? You see, one of the things that Jesus Christ had to face as he shared in the synagogue, as he shared the message of his Father to those around him, was the Pharisees and the scribes and the other group of people who thought they didn't need to hear and did not want to hear, because, you see, they already knew more than this guy from Nazareth standing up before them. And as he was there, they had this idea that you can't use those words. You can't compare yourself to God. You can't say you're on equal footing with God, as Jesus Christ did in the synagogue. You see, he was and is the person you and I can trust. He is the person that you and I who will set us free from bondage. Okay? Now, have you guys ever seen Gorilla Glue work? Okay? Whatever you do, if you use Gorilla Glue, please, if you want to actually put whatever it is you're putting together and use the expandable Gorilla Glue, don't use a whole bunch of it. Because your product is not going to be what you thought it was. It's one of those things that doesn't look like that on TV, okay? You see, one of the things about Jesus Christ he wants us to understand is that we can be set free from bondage by trusting in him, because he is the one who came preaching good tidings, good news to the brokenhearted, to the captives, and to the ones who needed to be set free. And I want you to think about this. Paul wrote, and Paul said here that we must stand fast, therefore, and we must not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. In Romans 3:23 it says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." This morning as we were in our Sunday school classroom, we were talking, and I said, you know what's interesting is so many people say that we have nothing in common, right? And as we were sharing, we realized because we have a whole bunch more in common than what we want to lead on. Okay, we do. We all have this. We have blood flowing through us. We have a heart that's pumping. We have hair that's growing on our head. We've got ears to hear, noses to smell, and feet to walk, and all these things. We're a lot more in common than what we want to admit to one another. The difference is our personality inside of us. That's the only thing that makes us different. But physically, we're identical with one another. So as I think about this whole idea here, that what Romans 3:23 is, what it is saying here is that we're also identical in this. We've all sinned. There ain't a person sitting here this morning, there's not a person who's ever walked the face of this earth who has never sinned in their life. I've met people who will act as though they've never sinned. I've even met someone who even used the words that I've never sinned. But Jesus Christ shared, and Paul used those words in Romans 3:23, that every person who's walking the face of this earth is a slave. Because if every single one of us have sinned, we're then held captive by that sin. Now remember, what did Paul say in Galatians 5:1? He says, don't be enslaved by it, don't be entangled by it. But he says here that this is what's going to happen. Now listen to what John wrote in John chapter 8, verse 32. Okay, I want you to listen to this. That you and I don't have to be entangled with sin. If you're a Christian here, let me see your hand. So you don't have to raise your hand. Just tell. Say if you want to, you can, but you don't have to. That means you've trusted Christ in your life as your personal Lord and Savior. And what that means is you should no longer be entangled by sin. It should no longer have a hold of you and drowning you. Okay? That's what sin will do. It'll entangle us and drown us. But listen to what John chapter 8, verses 32 through 36 say about this idea of being set free from this bondage that we don't need to have in our lives. And this is what is written. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants, and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free? Jesus answered them, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. And a slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Now, I want you to think about what he is saying there. First of all, does anybody have any idea who Jesus Christ might be talking to right there? You know, when a statement is made in the Bible and it says, we've never sinned before. We've never been in bondage before. Sounds like a Pharisee to me, doesn't it to you? So here he is speaking to these religious people who are supposed to know the Word of God, who are supposed to have a relationship with God, and there they are. They have the opposite of that. They are in such bondage that they don't even have any idea that they are. And remember now that they don't want to listen to this carpenter's son from a little crummy town called Nazareth. So they don't want to listen to this guy. After all, he isn't worthy of sharing with us about this. He doesn't have any experience like we have. Think about that. The Pharisees thought they could lord that over people because they thought they had everything they needed to do it. Okay? And here they are being put in their place in a very polite, respectful way by a carpenter's son who is, as far as they're concerned, not the person they want to hear this from. He says, but they literally said, we have never been in bondage ever in our entire lives. If you notice, that's what they said. They said, we have never been in bondage. And what did Jesus Christ say? If you've ever sinned before, you've been in bondage. So really what they're saying here is that, hey, you know what? We've never sinned. scary when somebody says that. It's really scary. But as you see here in your life and in my life, if we want to live dangerously for God, the place that begins is not worrying about what other people are doing or not doing, whether other people are right with God or not right with God, which starts with, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and am I right with God? This is what it's all about. And here is what Paul is saying there in verse 1 of Galatians chapter 5. Again, he says, stand fast in the liberty. They say that the reason that most people come to America, both either legally or illegally, they come because they want liberty. They want freedom. And if you want to know the truth, don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. Because no one wants to be held in bondage. No one wants a foot on top of them and holding them down, not allowing them to do anything. So here we see that Christ, he's saying, listen, you and I, Christian church, we have liberty in Jesus. We have freedom in Jesus. We have a God who said, I want you to love me and serve me, and you know what? I don't want you to be held in bondage. You know, when you have children, one of the things you ultimately want to see happen with your children is for them to grow up, don't you? I didn't say it's easy, but you really do. You want to see them grow up. You want to see them to succeed, and you don't want to see them under bondage. You don't want to see them stuck in such huge credit card debts and having all this stuff that just weighs them down, right? Well, one of the things about God is He doesn't want us to be weighed down by sin in our life. As you look at our culture today, listen, our culture has multiple symptoms, but one cause, sin. Okay? We have all kinds of symptoms of sin, but the fact is that those symptoms are a direct result of that sin. Abortion is a direct result of sin. Homosexuality is an exact result of sin. These are just things that we see thrown out there to us. And we don't want to name it what it is. And it's sin, bondage to it. And churches, we can get caught into that. We can be stuck in this sin, this bondage that God says, I don't want you to have. God says, I want you to live free. I gave you my son so you could live free from the effects of sin. When I go to the doctor, how many of you go to the doctor and hope they only cure half of what it is that you go to see them for? Right? No, we go there, we want to do what? In fact, we usually say this, I went to the doctor yesterday, why don't I feel better already? Right? I mean, we want it immediately, and that's okay. Listen, when you don't feel good, you want to start feeling better. When we go to Jesus Christ, we need to make sure we understand that He has come not to partially set you free, not partially to set me free, but to completely set us free from the sin that bonds us and keeps us down. He wants to set us free and has set us free if we trust Him. But we need to understand that Jesus Christ does a couple of things for us. There are two ways to break the bonds of slavery, of sin in your life, in my life, and the life of God's church. I want us to understand this. If we're going to live dangerously, it doesn't matter to me what it is that you're doing for God. It doesn't matter to me what it is that we as a church choose to do for God. If we cannot do it properly, if we are in bondage to sin, we have to make sure that if we're going to live dangerously for Him, that we let His liberty come through us. And what Christ has done for us, He's done this in two ways for us. He's accomplished this. First of all, a captive slave can find freedom through only a couple of different ways. All right? A captive slave can only find freedom through death of their owner or through being purchased by someone else, and that person setting them free by their new master. I want you to know something. You and I as Christians, we have a new master who has set us free. His name is Jesus. He has set us free from the sin that so easily entangles each and every one of us, that so easily entangles us. He said, I've set you free. I've given you this freedom. And I promise you this morning, if you or I are ever going to be the people God wants us to be, let us grab a hold of this truth that He has purchased us by His blood, and He has set us free. free. He has set us free. Hold on to that truth. He has set us free. Jesus Christ has done so to us. He has done so because he has done this to you and to me. Listen to what Romans 6:4 says. Romans 6:4 says this. It says, therefore, we were buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. You ever go through life and sometimes you just feel like, man, nobody cares about me? You know, or you go through life and all of a sudden you keep having these same old thoughts going through your mind, or whatever it might be of struggles that you might be having that hold you back from being the person that you can be for God, that holds you back from being completely used by God. You see, one of the things about allowing God to use you and I is we have to make ourselves very vulnerable to him. One of the things that America teaches is that men are never to be vulnerable, we are never to cry, we're supposed to suck it up. Okay? We're not supposed to let anybody know that we are weak. And that's just something that we very much clearly, in a very indirect fashion, and sometimes a very direct fashion, teach in our culture. But one of the things we have to remember about God, he says, listen, I've already done it for you. All you've got to do is come to the realization that I love you. All you have to do is come to the realization that I died for you, that I've taken you out of slavery. They say one of the reasons, well, many history books will tell you that the Civil War was all about slavery. That was just one of their issues with the Civil War. But what the Civil War did is it created freedom for many, many people, did it not? It brought a lot of death to people as well. But I want you to know something. For those people who died, so that a handful of people could have freedom, to them it was worth it. Because there's those individuals, those thousands upon thousands of slaves no longer had to be held in bondage. And for you and for me, the one person who says, I will die for you because you do not have to be held in bondage, his name is Jesus. Says you don't have to be held there. I've given you freedom, and I have done this at no cost to you. It cost him everything. And I want this morning to understand that I truly believe that God is going to do great things through his people in our church if we are willing to say, God, let us be slaves to you and not slaves to sin. Paul said, I'm a bondservant to God. Paul's life was completely consumed by who God was and who God is. And God used Paul in ways that he can still do to this day. And he changed thousands upon thousands of people's lives. And we need to remember that. He says, you have been buried. You have been buried with him. But you have also been raised up by the glory of the Father. Think about that for a moment. You have been raised up by the glory of the Father. You know, it's hard to comprehend that sometimes. But I want you to know just how much God loved you. He said, I'm sending my son to die for you. You don't have to be slaves to sin any longer. You don't have to be. Think about things in your life right now that you do. Okay? And you do them and you not really thought about them at all. It's just something, maybe you call it a routine. But the moment that you can't do it anymore, I want you to know something, and your life goes crazy because you can't do it anymore, and it's not something that's literally a life and death situation, you're enslaved to it. Okay? You're enslaved to it. I want you to understand that they've got a new commercial. Have you guys ever seen the new commercial for I think it's Microsoft has a new laptop computer, and the whole idea of the commercial is I'm dying. You guys know what I'm talking about? And everybody's got their cell phones and their laptops, and they're all at 1%, and these people don't know what to do with life because their computer isn't working. Okay? And it's funny, I watch this thing, these people fight over getting their plugs in the wall so they can keep up with whatever it is they're keeping up with. I think our priorities in our culture, they are getting a little messed up, guys. and I want us to see here is that we become slaves of so much to things. Listen, technology is great, but not when it enslaves us. Okay, so this technology has done awesome things and will continue to do awesome things, but not to enslave us. God has done great things for us, never to enslave us, but to set us free. He has never, ever done anything to you, to me, but to set us free from what is going on around us. Our habits hard to break sometimes. Let me see your hand. You ever broke a habit? The first time you tried it, you were perfect. I'm never going back to that one before. Okay, listen, I think the worst person I've ever seen in my life for this is Oprah Winfrey. Okay, she's been doing diet commercials for 45 years. Okay, I don't think any of them would work for her, because if they did, she wouldn't have to be on the commercials anymore trying to sell us diet commercial. Did you know that? Okay, and the thing is, she looks the same in every single one of them. Did you guys know that? Looks the same. And she can ride a bike too. The latest one I saw, she can ride a bike. That's very impressive. But I want you to think about something. Every time we go through the habits are hard to break. If you like to eat, boy, it's hard to break that habit. If you like to sit and do whatever it is that you like to do, those habits can be hard to break. And every one of us have habits in our life. And one of the hardest things about breaking a habit is taking the first step to break that habit. Okay? Most of the time people pick out the obvious habits, drinking or smoking or whatever it might be, but there's a lot of other habits that we have in our life. Okay? How many of you guys remember Ferdinand Marcos, the Philippine lady? They said she owned thousands and thousands of habits. You know what they were called? Shoes. Okay? She had thousands upon thousands of pairs of shoes. And she didn't want to get rid of them. See, one of the things about habits, they're so hard to get away from. But I want you to know something. The habit of sin in our life has been broken by Jesus Christ. No one can stop sinning. We can work hard at not doing it, but we'll always be tempted. There's always going to be sin that's going to slip into our life. Just don't make a practice out of it. The Bible says don't make a practice out of sinning. But it's going to happen occasionally, as much as we don't want it to. But here I want us to see that Jesus Christ died so you and I, so his church, that we would not have to be enslaved to it. He loved us so much that he gave his own life for you and for me. The issue, though, is really not slavery when it comes to what it is that is holding us back. The real issue to us is the one that we're enslaved to. Okay? Listen, Satan, as much as he wants you to believe this lie, cannot make you sin. As much as he wants us to believe that, he can't do it. He has not been given that authority by God to cause us to sin. I believe Terry said this morning in our Sunday school class, choice. Right? It's a choice by which you or I make on a daily basis how we're going to live our life, what we're going to allow to affect our life, what we're going to allow not to affect our life. It boils down to choice. You know, when you drive down 31 out here, did you guys know that when you go south on 31, if you've never paid attention to this before, there is not a gas station till Johnson County almost. Okay? There isn't. If you turn left, there's a gas station about every 2.5 blocks. Okay? So, and also when you go south, did you know you can buy a Ford, you can buy a Chevy, you can buy a Hyundai, you can buy a Honda, you can buy a Toyota, you can buy used, all of the above. Did you guys know that? Okay? You can find all that going south. Now, ultimately, why do they give us all those things? Because of choice. Right? Because of choice that we have. So one of the things here that I want us to see here is, who are you enslaved to? It's a choice. And the moment you say that I'm not, I want you to dig just a little bit deeper. Because you see, we have to understand that the issue is not what it is, but who it is. Because you see, Satan wants to bind us. He wants to keep us from not being who God has made us to be. But what did Jesus Christ say? What did he say? And the truth shall set you what? Free. The Bible also tells us this in John chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he says, no man comes to the Father but by who? Me, he says about himself. So sin, unfortunately, for every one of us, affects us. But at the same time, it's an area by which we can say, hey, I got it. You know, every one of us did not get tempted the same way. Did you know that? Because we all don't have that same weakness. We all don't have that same temptation that may come into our life to get us to sin. But the reality is that every single person has the ability to sin or not to sin. And every person here this morning, I will share with you now, you will have the opportunity to either trust Christ or reject Him. It's totally up to us. Because you see, God doesn't want us to be enslaved, but set free. You ever let a dog off the chain once it's been on a chain for a long time? I dare you to try to catch him. Okay? Good luck with that. If you can, write a book, okay? Because it's going to be almost impossible to catch him, right? It is. It's going to be almost impossible to catch him. Why? Because they've been set free. Listen, as Christians, let us be set free from the bondage of sin and quit trying to hook it back up to our necks. Let us be set free and run for God. Because that's what He wants us to be doing. And remember, it's not what it is that we're doing, but who has enslaved us. Paul uses a word, a very interesting word. Paul there in verse 5, I want you to pay attention to the word. He says yoke. Okay? So when Paul is writing here, Paul wants us to understand here, he says we are not to be saddled, not to be held down by a yoke of bondage. Now, Paul is using a metaphor here, of agricultural metaphor here. And what Paul is trying to get us to see here is that his audience is going to understand what a yoke is. If you don't know what a yoke is what a farmer used to use. In fact, will still use if you go to Amish communities, that they will have a yoke that they put over the top of oxen. And what they do is that allows the oxen or to horses or whatever they may be using to share the burden of what it is that they are pulling, and they can do it together. One doesn't carry more weight than the other. And here Paul's saying, don't be held down by this yoke that sin wants us to be held down by. I want you to hear what Matthew chapter 11 verses 28 through 30 say. It says this. It says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. It says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's interesting how we have such a tendency sometimes to run to darkness, isn't it? It's interesting how sometimes we have a tendency to try to make things harder on ourselves than what we ought to. Have you guys ever read the fishing manual or the hunting manual or the manual to your car? Okay. My dad says, I want you to help me put this tub, as I shared with you earlier. So, but just a word of warning ahead of time, there's 18 pages of instructions. I said, no way. And I want you to know something. There wasn't 18, there was 15. Okay, why do they do that? Why do we do that to ourselves? Burden ourselves down into making it out as almost as if you cannot do something. Well, Jesus Christ says, I don't have 25 pages of something for you to read through before I will explain to you to trust me. He says, trust me. He says, put my yoke on. I will carry the weight that I need to carry. In fact, that weight is every bit of it. He will take every single bit of struggle you have in your life, every single bit of struggle that we have in our lives, of our churches and in our lives, and He will take them from us and say, you don't have to be under that bondage any longer. Have you ever read the Old Testament from Genesis all the way to Malachi? Okay, if you haven't done that before, read it sometime. Some of it's going to be a little bit challenging, okay? But when it talks about as many different things, it's got poems in there, it's got the law in there, it's got minor prophets, it's got major prophets, but it's going to be primarily the talking about, especially the first part of it, the law. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I did not read the 2,500 pages of the American Act or whatever Health Care Act that they passed so many years ago. Did you guys read that? Because I know our congressman did, because they told us they didn't when they were on TV. Okay? There were 2,500 pages of it. Well, I'm jumping right into that one, okay? Okay, well, let me tell you something. That's what people sometimes think about God, that God's got this huge burden that we're supposed to try to understand. He says, no, you don't. He says, understand me. I love you. I love you, and that's because I came for you, and I'll never stop loving you. He says, don't be held out by bondage. Don't let that sin hold you back. He says it easily entangles us. Easily entangles us. If you ever spend much time fishing, one of the worst things that can happen is monofilament line get caught in your prop. Okay? When monofilament line is caught in the prop of your trolling motor, you have to take your prop apart, and you got to go buy new seals because it destroys the seals, and water goes where it's not supposed to. And it easily entangles. Sin easily entangles your life and my life. Easily does it in such a way that we don't think anything about it. Because it was so easy. Remember, if it's too easy, it can't be true. Right? But I want you to know something. Satan wants us to believe this. Satan says, hey, I've got you. But Jesus Christ says what? I'll prove to you that I've got you. The cross. I'll prove to you I've got you. And I've got you. He has you. This morning. You see, the problem was that the Pharisees wanted the law. The Pharisees were stuck with the law. That's all they knew. That's all they wanted to know. And so one of the things of the law, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, okay? What those first 5 books of the Scriptures tell us is the law. And we all know what the law is for, right? It tells us what to do and what not to do. It's basically what the law is all about. So one of the things here that these Pharisees and these people trying to get Jesus Christ to his followers to believe it, you got to follow the law, and the law is going to set you free. But the law wasn't. The law was there to kind of guide and to direct. One of the things that Jesus Christ wants us to understand is that the law put burdens on there that he was releasing. The Pharisees, the scribes, and all of those individuals, they were placing weights on people that no one could bear. You ever go to work and all of a sudden you've got a job description, or you go in there, you're like, wait a minute, I didn't have this much to do yesterday. Where did this all come from? Right? And you're burdened down. Well, this is what the Pharisees were doing. They were burdening down these people, burning them down instead of setting them free. And Jesus Christ sets you free. He sets me free. And that law that they're trying to burden people down was simply nothing more than just a tutor. It was an attendant. It was a guardian. And the whole idea there, and it was to keep the people immature. It was to keep them in line because they didn't want them to think for themselves. I just read an article about Venezuela. And I don't know if you guys know what's happening in Venezuela, but one of the things that's happening down there is the government doesn't want people to think for themselves. Okay, that's one of the things that's happening down there on a huge, massive scale. And what they're doing is they're getting people they're convincing people that everybody else in the world is wrong and they're right. Okay? And instead of trying to set people free, they're having them be caught up in bondage to hold them down. And I want you to know something. God says, I want to set you free. This morning, as I share this with you, I want you to be set free. If you are here this morning and you're living under bondage, listen, if you are not a Christian here this morning, you're living under bondage that God says, I'll set you free from. You know, there's nothing more. Some of our lives that we live, the fact is that bondage can make you feel grumpy, insecure. It can make you feel in ways that you never thought that you would feel before. But freedom makes you feel good, doesn't it? You know, how many of you remember when you had a project, let's say you're at work, and boy, there was a lot of pressure to get that project done. And the moment that project got done, what happened? Relief. Freedom from the stress of what it was that was holding you there. So this morning, what is holding you down? Jesus Christ came not to bind us, not to put our feet and put them in concrete and have them sit there and not be able to do anything. He has come so that we could have freedom. He has come so we can live dangerously for Him. But please understand, we cannot live dangerously for God if we are entangled in sin in our lives. We cannot do it. That means we have to understand that God says, I will set you what? Free. I'll set you free. And I don't know about you guys, but if I get a coupon in the mail tomorrow that says I can go get a free Whopper with no strings attached, guess where I'm going for lunch tomorrow with my coupon in hand to get a free Whopper, okay? So I want you to know something. I've got a coupon for you this morning. His name is Jesus. He says, I will set you free. All you have to do is cash it in. All you have to do is grab a hold of that concept and understand. He says, I will give you freedom like you've never had before. I will set you free. How many of you guys have keys in your pocket right now? All right, I got one right here. I've got 4 keys on here on my keychain. I've got one to the shed behind the church. Got one to the office where the printer is. I've got one to my office door, and I've got one to every single outside door of this building. Okay, and if I put my office key door in the outside building doors, you know what doesn't happen? They don't get unlocked. You see, what happens is when we try to fill ourselves with something we think is going to make us happy, think it's going to make us unlock us and give us freedom, and we put the wrong key in there, and it doesn't do anything. Doesn't do a thing because it's not capable of doing that. When I put the right key in the door, as you guys know this as well as I do, it works. I've done it. We've all probably put the wrong key in something at one point in our life. Why isn't that working? We need the right key. You might be saying, I don't understand the struggles that I have. Why wouldn't they go away? Because you're not letting Jesus Christ have them. He has set you free. He doesn't want you to be held down. You know, He doesn't want us to be held down by anything. Kayla was here this past summer. And I'm just going to give you guys some advice. Don't ever try to wrestle with a Marine. It's really a bad idea. And he said, let's wrestle. Sure, why not? After about 45 seconds, I said, let me go. Because I thought I could do it when I knew I couldn't. Listen, you might be here this morning and say, I don't need any help. I don't need to be set free from nothing. I want you to know something. Jesus Christ said, I'm here to set you free. I'm here to set you free. Will you let Him set you free? Will we as a church say, you know what? God set us free. Set us free to be and do whatever you want us to do. Because listen, it is no fun when you can't breathe. It's no fun when that foot is on your neck. It is no fun when you think you can set yourself free when you can't. It is no fun. And I promise you this, that God says, I will set you free. I will set you free. I don't care what struggle you have in your life right now. He said, I'll set you free from it. The question is, I have for you now, will you let Him set you free? I hope you can say, I want to be set free. I'm going to tell you how you do that. You don't have to come up here and pray. You don't have to come and speak to me to do that. You need to speak to the Father. You know what? I want to be set free. I have to be set free. Because I'm not who I want to be for you, for my church. I'm not who God you made me to be. Will you let Him set us free? Set me free. He is waiting to do it. There's one of the greatest joys is to know that you're set free. Man, when you let that animal free and they're going, man, they are so excited because they're free. Be free. Don't let Satan hold you back. Because he says, I've already set you free. In fact, Jesus Christ says this, and I'll close. He says, take my yoke upon you. It's not burdensome, it's light. Will you let Him carry you this morning? Will you say, you know what? I'm giving it to you. Again, right where you're sitting, or if you're led to come and pray. let him set you free if you're not. Brother Don, would you come?